Harvested beauty, Nehora. 4 white birds dropped in out of a clear blue sky. Their tiredness seeming tameness, so low did they fly over tourists spread-eagled on the beach. Birds of unusual fineness, crooning each to each in soft strange tones like some outlandish speech. Sailing gently down, orange legs trailing, to make their landing on the standing waters of the creek, amidst the blended reek of sewage, suntan. My name is Cliff Cook. I was born in London. I studied in Leicester, and after the age of about 19 I never went back to London, and I don't want to go back to London. I think my story will be a bit different from other people you're going to interview, because I came here without money, and I came here as part of an adventure, let's say. I think a lot of my life has been an adventure. I never went to any country as a tourist. I always went to the country to find out about people and to live the life that I could along with the people. And I also love going into the mountains. Whenever I went to a country, I always went on foot. For instance, when I went to Sicily, I walked up Mount Etna from Taormina, and when I went to the east of Czechoslovakia, I went to the Tatra Mountains, the high Tatra Mountains. Very often it seemed a natural thing to me, and it was the kind of holidays that I really needed and liked. I'm a teacher, and I worked for 7 years in a very democratic school, an unusual school in England, but very tiring. And every summer I needed to get away. And I went to different countries. I went to Norway, I went to Czechoslovakia, to Italy, to France, to Germany, many countries. The last country I came to was Greece. And the reason for that was it was 1974, 1975, and the junta, the military dictatorship, had fallen the year before. I was interested in Greece, but I didn't want to come here during the period of the military dictatorship. So I had this very strong feeling when I landed in Patras, which I had in no other country, which was a feeling of complete safety and of being at home. And it was immediate, and I can still feel it now, 40 years later, how it felt. And it was a complete surprise to me. I did what I usually do. I set off on foot. I went to the island of Ithaki, which is Ithaca, which is the Homeric island where Ulysses ended up, where his wife was waiting. For me, it was an amazing experience to be in a country like that, in an island that was so surrounded by myth, and the myths that I'd loved since I was very young. And then I went to the Peloponnesus and walked through there and went to classical sites, and I so much loved the country that I started coming back every year to a different part of Greece. And after about 4 years I decided that I wanted to give up my job. It was exhausting me. Because I came from a very ordinary working class family, we didn't have books in our house. I had to go to the library to find the books. My parents didn't read, and so literature wasn't really put at any high value in our house, in our home. It was only when people from outside started to take an interest in me and to encourage me to read and took me to a library, and I started to get interested. But I didn't have contacts. I didn't have people, apart from local contacts, I didn't have people who could really point me in the right direction. BBC was actually amazingly important for me because it opened up the world to me in terms of literature. It was very good then. And one thing led to another. One interest led to another, which was quite apart from my home background. My school didn't help much, not much. I went to university and studied literature, and so that showed really how important it was to me. As for writing, I even at school I was a writer, and that was recognised by some teachers that I could write. My big problem was that I didn't know how to edit, how to work on my own writing. I had the ideas, I'd put them down, I would lose them, I would have great thick wadges of paper, but I did nothing more than that. I didn't know what the next steps were. And then I taught, and I was involved in teaching quite heavily, and I didn't have much time for teaching. So I decided that the second part of my life, the first part of my life I wanted to be a teacher, the second part of my life I wanted to be a writer. And that's one reason why I came here. I thought it would give me the opportunity. But I started teaching again here, so again there was the conflict between teaching and writing. It's only in the last few years, really, that I've made a decision that all this paper here, I can't let it just mount up like this. I've got to start somewhere and do the best I can on something, to really work on something. And to be able to do that, I had to get together with other people. And so we formed a writing group here, and we criticised each other's poems and we rewrote them, and this was a very helpful process for me, which I should have been doing years ago. Now I have a relationship with Chris Peachment, a really perfect relationship. He's writing a novel, I'm writing a novel. I'm rewriting a novel that I gave up in 1999. I nearly finished it and I didn't know how to go on, and I just stopped. And that means for 20 years it's been sitting there on the shelf looking at me, saying, "Finish me." I didn't know what to do. And then I met Chris, and he is also working on a novel, and we seem to have formed this perfect working relationship, and things are going forward. And I'm so happy about this. It should be finished before Christmas. So I decided that I'd leave England for a year. I'd give up my job teaching, which was difficult, because I was very involved with the children, but it was a straight decision now. And I decided to walk down through France, which I did from the north of France to Bordeaux, which is 3/4 of the way through France. It rained nearly every day, but it was a great experience. And then I started working on vendanges, picking the grapes and moving across France to Lyon. And then I hitchhiked to Greece. And it was another strange experience where the snow was actually following me down through Italy across the northern plains. And I got to Brindisi and onto the boat, and as the boat went away, it left the snow behind, and we were sailing in beautiful blue seas and coming into Patras for the first time, where the geraniums were blossoming, and it was just like a magic enchantment in November. Then when I got to Greece, I had a really tough time, because I tried to work like I worked in France, but things didn't work out. It was very, very tough, and I had one chance left. I'd lost all my money, which wasn't much, and I had one contact, and that was with Hania. It was a man called John Craxton, who was a painter, and he was the uncle of my flute teacher in England. And she said, if you ever need help, call on my uncle. And so I phoned from Navplion where I was in trouble, and I asked him, could you find me a job? And he said, yes, come. And so I came to Hania. I didn't choose to come here. And that's what happened. I worked in an olive oil factory. Again, it was very tough, extremely tough. And after a year, I got back to teaching. I wanted a break from teaching. After a year, I thought, okay, it's time to go back to teaching. But I started teaching here, teaching children English. And that's what I've been doing for the last 40 years. I've also been travelling around Greece. I've travelled all around Crete, over the mountains, on foot, and on bicycle, not just in Greece, but in the Balkans, in Israel. This is the way I prefer to travel. I see that the way that I see things is quite different now from a later generation of people who came to Greece to buy property, to live here quite comfortably. And sometimes it's as though we are worlds apart. I can't really describe to them some of the experience I've had here. Some of the deepest experiences I've had here is just the experience of hospitality as it was 40 years ago and as it still is in places now. And I mean people who were really poor then, and they would take you into their house and they would share what they had. And this was a deeply moving experience to me. Also, the whole notion, the Greek notion of hospitality, philoxenia, it means, it's quite an interesting notion, because it means that while somebody is in your house and they have need, that you supply that need. It doesn't matter whether you like them, even if they're your enemy. While they're in your house, you're duty bound to provide for them in a hospitable way. And there are old stories about this, about people who really were enemies, and they were given hospitality. But the moment they got out, then they had to run for it. So what with over these 40 years, the development of tourism, it's changed the picture quite a lot. But I still feel that there's that basic notion of hospitality and warmth, I think. That's another thing that I really like, and spontaneity in the Greek people. As far as the Cretans are concerned, and particularly the West Cretans, the Haniotes, they have a certain reputation for fierceness, particularly the Sfakians. I think that this is like a surface shell very often. It can be very off-putting. You think, why is this man being so cool to me or so abrupt? But if you can break through that shell very often, you come to something completely different. And so I think you can be mistaken by first impressions. I think West Cretans are tough. They had to be tough because of their history. And they put up a certain protective front, let's say. But once you get under that, you find, I'm repeating myself, but I think you find something very different. So I've already said what my way of exploring a place is and what I like to do. And the first thing I do when I go to a foreign country is to get out of the town and get away from the tourist areas, and if possible just to walk into the mountains, because I immediately start to feel well in the mountains. It takes about, in my experience, it takes about 3 days really to lose all those silly thoughts that are constantly going through our heads in our daily lives. It takes time for all this to calm down and to start to see things properly and to appreciate them. So in West Crete, it's an unusually good place for walking and for finding wild places. Half of the county of Hania, because Crete is divided into separate counties, Hania, Heraklion, Rethymnon and Scythia, or Lassithi. And so the county of Hania is the wildest, I think. Almost half of it is mountains. The plains, the northern plains, are quite tame and quite separate, but the White Mountains are very high mountains, nearly 3,000 meters in height, and like the moon when you get up there. Extremely beautiful, but quite dangerous, quite waterless, almost no plants, but an amazing landscape. When you got to the highest mountain in the White Mountains, you can see to the island of Rhodes, or you can see north to the Peloponnesos. It's an amazing place to go. I've already described what my experience is walking in the mountains for several days, for a week, longer, and the fact that it takes about 3 days for your mind to calm down and for all the ideas, the silly ideas usually that obsess you, to calm down and to start to see things, to appreciate them. And there's another step then, is to get those ideas down as you're walking. That means you have to have a notebook with you in your pocket, and you have to learn to value those ideas, not just to let them go. Otherwise they go on in your head, and then you start to worry, am I going to lose these ideas or these images or whatever they are? So walking is, lots of creative people find walking to be really necessary for creation. People like Beethoven would walk every day. Wordsworth, the great English poet, he would walk great distances every day. This was a part of their creative life. It's something to do with the rhythm that you establish that really clears your head. The idea of actually writing about Greece for me is very important, not just Crete, but Greece, because it seems to me complete nonsense. I go to a writing group and nearly all the poems that are being read out are personal ones about personal problems, and I think, well, hold on, where are you? How can you be here and almost nothing to come out about the experience of being here? But this is a bit unkind, but this is the way I feel about it. I feel that we should celebrate being here. We should appreciate it and celebrate it. And part of the way we can pay back for our luck at being here is to write about it. And I think that's another thing that Cretan people really appreciate. And sometimes they rediscover their island or their country through something that you might have written, because when you come with the eye of a stranger, you see things differently. And I think that's very interesting if you can get that across to, like my friends who are Greek. I think they feel complimented by that, and I'm glad about that. We have a writing group here in Hania called the Hania International Poetry Society. Actually, it's in two parts. We have one group which is to do with poetry and another to do with prose. We meet once a week. For the first time this year, we had a poetry festival here, which was very successful. If you have the good chance to visit West Crete, I hope that you'll make some discoveries, and I'm sure you will, like the ones that I've made here, by just getting away from the usual sites, the usual places. And I really wish that you have good memories of the place when you get back to your own country. Thanks very much to Story Hunters for giving me the chance to express, to talk about my experience here and to communicate with you. And I hope to see you here someday.